Hi everyone, this is your favorite film critic Jay or Jaylan Salah as you formerly know her. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing director Zhang to talk about his short A Bear Remembers, which explores themes of cultural identity, generational memory, and the echoes of the past. Of course, we were supposed to be joined by the co-director, Knight, but due to difficulties, blah blah blah, we can't. So Zhang, first of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. And also, I spend so much time with Hannah, my co-director, that neither of us say anything different. We just always say the same thing. So yeah.
That's perfect. Okay, first of all, when I read the title, A Bear Remembers, I couldn't help but ask, remember what?
Hmm. Well, it's definitely an ambiguous title. And arguably I don't want to give any spoilers, but I guess part of the question is whether or not things are remembered and what is remembered. So yes, intentionally very ambiguous. And I think quite poetic. Like a lot of our favorite film titles, we love film names like there's an amazing Chinese film called An Elephant Sitting Still, and it's almost like a standalone piece of poetry. Like you don't even without seeing the film, I'm like, oh, like it's very evocative. So yeah, that's what we were really taken with that as a name. It fits so well in lots of ways.
How did this idea come up to you? Like, why this particular idea to turn into this short?
It actually started. So our background is as music video and commercials directors. Um, And we pitched an idea for a music video years ago, maybe like 8, 9 years ago, about all these spirits, and they were leaving Earth because they had no more reason to be here. And we pitched it to so many bands, and we were always surprised nobody wanted it. We were like, "What do you mean?" And it was quite simple. There was no like a lot of the elements were not there. There was no bear, there was none of the characters, but there was this idea of spirits coming to an end of their time. And something which is like we see spirits as eternal and they live on forever. And we loved how humanizing that was, that this sense of something that is eternal actually maybe isn't eternal. So that just stayed with us year after year and became more fleshed out and took on these British folklore elements and grew into the film. Yeah.
Okay, so you're a music video director and a commercial director originally. How different it is to start your first film, like an actual movie, than doing music video work and commercials and advertisements and stuff like that?
Yeah, to be honest, the script writing process was terrifying because for the first time we're using words. In music videos, you know what the vibe is of what you're going to make. Even if you don't have the idea yet, you can listen to the song and you know, okay, it's going to be sad or it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be this or that. And so I think we really approached it from that place because that was all that we knew. So for example, there's a very important scene in Bear, which is a dance scene with music. And very early on, we were like, oh, that's how they access the past. It's music that brings us into the past, and that's like the time machine almost that takes us back. And before anything else, we had this playlist on Spotify that was just all this amazing experimental music, and we were like, yeah, that's exactly the music that we should have when they're in this scene. So we came about it very backwards. We had a lot of tonal concepts in place for the film, but then the writing took so long because we it was the first time doing it, so that was um, a reverse process. We're very happy with the final film, but it was quite scary to get to that place, I think.
It actually made a beautiful, haunting film, if I may say. This
Oh.
is what brings me to the idea of, okay, you find poetry in film and poetry in motion. Do you have a favorite, like, poetic? Because for me, like, Jim Jarmusch is one of those poets of cinema, Kiarostami, Abbas Kiarostami too. So do you have other directors or just artists in general whom you feel like, wow, they just express themselves visually, but it's a visual poetry?
Yes, definitely. Well, in terms of living directors, we're both obsessed with Apichatpong, Willis Attical, films like Uncle Boonmee, and Tropical Malady, Syndromes in Century. That they are so, you know what? They're so boring. Like he's such a slow filmmaker, so you're never having like a quick time. But at the end, like it just seeps into you and like day after day I'm returning. I found myself rewatching Cemetery of Splendor 3 times. And the first time I watched it, I was like, wow, this is a really boring film. But then like, the next day I watched it and again. So I think it's this quite amazing thing. It's intangible. I don't know how you write a script or to create a film that gets that place which is so tonal and seems to be saying a lot, even though you're not quite sure what it's saying. Does that make sense?
Totally, 100% makes sense. Brings me to how did you agree on the bear and how you wanted the bear to look?
Yeah, look, I think we knew we didn't have the money for like a huge CGI creation. And folklore was really the point of reference. So, okay, we said folk costume. Yes, this is like a foundation. Every culture has folk costumes and we can do that. But then we had to like develop a logic because we said, okay, even though it's not in the film, what is the bear? It's not a bear, it's a spirit. Okay, what is a spirit? Maybe it's kind of like an extraterrestrial being who came here 4,000 years ago and has been wandering these hills and maybe 500 years ago some villagers see it and they say, oh, it's a spirit, and maybe they put like a mask on its face to make it look more like something they can understand, which is a bear. So none of this stuff is in the film, and I don't know if it was an important thing or not, but for me and Hannah, we really had to have like a very logic driven process for everything. So the bear has these very long finger claws because that looked a little bit alien. And if you're an extraterrestrial being, then you're gonna not have paws, you're gonna have alien hands. And so all these little things, like I say, I don't think anyone's watching the film like, oh, I think the bear is an extraterrestrial being, and that's not in there. But it hopefully builds into the layers that when you're watching it, there's something very believable or credible about the bear. And every decision from there, we said, well, look, he's been wandering around in the countryside for decades. So his fur is going to have moss in it, and the plants are going to be growing in, and there'll be a lot of weathering. So again, we just tried to really like logically go through the past few hundred years of his life and see what he's probably going to look like. So yeah, that was the process.
I want to also ask about the casting because I feel like every actor was on point, in place. So how did the casting process go?
Well, I guess our it was daunting, and a lot of the times in music videos and commercials, you're really going for a look or like an aesthetic. Um, Whereas this, they're full humans, they're characters. I think um, Lewis, who plays Peter, was maybe our first member of cast. Um, he just had something instantly like there's something with Peter which is very persistent and curious, and he's not really reading the social cues around him.
He has
Um,
naivete about him. It
Say
feels
again, yes, he's very
naivete,
yes,
exactly. Yeah. Just
completely.
innocence, purity. He's not been around a lot.
Yeah, completely that. But he also thinks he's quite world aware, and he's like thinks he knows stuff and he doesn't. And I think when we saw Lewis, he gave this performance which was very lovable. Like we didn't dislike him. You felt like, oh, you poor thing, you don't really get what's going on. That's not Lewis at all. Lewis is, he's not like that. But he gave this great performance that had that quality that was a little annoying, but you also still kind of could connect with him. Annie, who plays Ebba, she's amazing. I mean, she just heart melting. She does a lot of theatre, and
Shows.
theatre shows exactly. And theatre, it's hard because we knew with our Ebba character, we'd probably be doing a reach out that we couldn't ask more esteemed actresses, oh, could you read? I'm sorry, we didn't like your tape. So we were like, okay, we get to reach out to somebody. Who's it going to be? We had this long list of amazing British actresses. A lot of them had like felt maybe too like did you believe them as Ebba? Like she's lived kind of a tough life and has something we knew you had to look at her and not think, oh, this is just an actress coming into the role. Um, and then friends of ours who'd seen Annie, the actress in play, said you should cast Annie. And we were like, okay, but what can we see in her reel? Like, what can we watch of her tape? And they're like, well, you can't. She just does theatre, but you should go with Annie. And it was a real leap of faith. And actually, we'd seen photos of her. She looked like Ebba. We were like, oh my goodness. And then just three or four people who we really trust, like friends who we just like completely trust our opinion, were like, there is no one else in this world you should cast. She was in a play called Love a few years ago, and so many people told us, like, this was in London, they were like, it's transformative, and she is like, she will make you have like this breakdown experience in the room. And we were like, okay, well, that sounds good. That sounds like what we need forever. So we took a leap of faith. We visited her in her cottage. She lives in this beautiful cottage in the English
Wow.
countryside.
Makes
Yeah,
me love her
wow.
more. Can you
I
believe living in a cottage? Can I
no,
please go?
she is so that she's so like the character in the sense of this connection of nature. She's an artist as well. She has all these paintings on the walls, like of the wood of the house that she paints flowers everywhere. So yeah, and she was amazing and she was great. For the bear, we had a great actress or a dancer called Rihanna, who was the performer in the suit, but we knew we weren't going to be reusing Rihanna's voice in the final film. So she brought the bear to life in a beautiful way. But the process of finding the bear, he was the last character to join. The voice was. In the end, we managed to get Ciarán Hinds, who's an incredible, very esteemed British actor, and he came on. We knew his voice was perfect. We knew he'd do a beautiful performance. Annie had been in a play with him years before. They did a Chekhov play together. And she said, when you reach out to him, tell him Annie would love to be in a scene with you, even if we're not in the same room and we're hundreds of miles apart. Let's do it again. And so we wrote this letter to Kieran saying, why we love him for the bear, but also this appeal from Annie, just like, come on, Kieran, we'd be in a film together. So that was lovely. And he said yes. And yeah, that was our cast. They were amazing.
Okay, so what was the most difficult scene to shoot? But maybe to me, an average viewer, it wouldn't be one of the like the big scenes or the bear scenes or like going up the hill.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a boring dialogue scene. I want to know the most difficult, like left you, okay, whoa, finally, day's over.
That one that's very easy to answer. It is going up the hill. Even though it's quite short in the film, it's maybe like 5 or 6 shots, maybe it's more. We shot in Wales. I'm sure Wales has an international reputation for bad weather. Um, and Wales delivered the bad weather. We did the first scene we shot was on top of the hill, the dialogue scene with the bear and Annie and the bear and Ebba and Peter. And that day was grey and kind of like gloomy, but the weather was fine. It wasn't that cold. It wasn't that wet. When we came back 2 days later to shoot going up the hill, it was like horizontal rain all day, so cold because when you get wet, you're never going to get dry again. You're never going to be warm. Annie is she's not 21, so her mobility um, isn't that of a 21-year-old, and the bear is even less mobile. And the bear is made of sheep's wool, so every hour of rain, heavier, exactly, it's heavier.
Oh, absorbs
Yeah,
the water. Oh my,
it
I keep
absorbs the water.
imagining.
So you have all these like time limits of like when is Annie gonna like just physically be like I can't go on? When is the bear gonna be too wet to film anymore? And yeah, it was hard. In the end, there's a wide shot where they're dancing on the hill. And we were like, okay, it's so far away where you can't even see Aunt Ebba, the character in that shot. So we've got Annie to go and sit in the car, and our producer Maeve, who is amazing, um, put on the wig that Annie wears for Ebba, and she put on the clothes and she learnt the dance. So Maeve really stepped into it just for
Wow.
the like one shot. But that was a hard day, very hard.
But the ending is just worthwhile. It's totally
Oh.
worth it because what a great haunting, a very beautiful visual experience. Seriously, Zhang, you took me on a whirlwind of, mystery and folklore and just imagination. So thank you for this film and thank you for this interview.
Oh, thank you so much. Such a pleasure to get to talk about it. Thank you so much.